My name is Jill Bearup and I like Shakespearean comedies and pretending to punch people.
Well aimed of such a young one.
Let's back up. I started a Patreon goal in August that was basically, if we hit this goal, then I will make a scene with some actual acting in it and also theatrical violence, like some punching or something, and we'll get someone to shoot it so it looks really pretty, and I'll tell you all about how it was made and we'll put it on the internet. And we might even throw in some things like breaking down the techniques behind what we're doing. And so we hit that Patreon goal in 3 days, because apparently what my patrons like is me being really enthusiastic about things, no surprise there, and also pretending to punch people. Admittedly, that one was slightly more surprising, but I'm very enthusiastic about it. So if you are just here for the Shakespeare and you are wildly keen to see Kate and Petruchio engage in a sort of war of mostly words, then there is a time code right here. As if by magic. Or you can look in the video description. If, on the other hand, you want to see a bit more of what we got up to behind the scenes, stick with me. Perhaps I should introduce myself in case you're new here. Like I said, I'm Jill Bearup, I make media analysis videos, I act, I sing, and I really love stage combat. But combining YouTube videos and stage combat really doesn't work on your own, so I needed a crew, or a team, or a gang, or something. When I needed someone to fight me, and also to choreograph it, then Duncan was kind of the obvious choice.
I'm Duncan Woodruff. I'm an actor and a stage combat instructor, and the occasional fight choreographer as well. I teach actors how to perform stage combat.
And then I also needed someone to film it. As it happens, I was in a play recently, a murder mystery. One of the guys in it is Bruce Partleton, and he is a filmmaker, and he's also worked with Duncan before. It's a small world after all. We ended up with more people than that, but we'll get there. So the question became, what to do and where? Strictly for research purposes, I watched a whole load of "we trained to be Jedi" or stunt people or whatever videos on YouTube. They really impressed upon me the importance of the writing and the acting, because the cinematography of the final thing is somewhat out of my hands. That will be kind of tell Bruce what you're aiming for and then stand back and let him do his thing. But I didn't want to try and write something original and then have it be rubbish, because that just kind of lets everything down. So
Jill came along and did a stage combat course with us
a year
and a half ago, and did her basic exam.
And for that exam, my partner and I used part of the dialogue from the scene in The Taming of the Shrew where Kate meets Petruchio. I have a soft spot for Shakespearean comedy, I freely admit this. And so I thought, why not perform a longer section of the scene where you get to fit the violence in around the dialogue rather than vice versa?
When we do it for a course, there are 10 of you, 20 of you, 50 of you, so that everyone is having a fair assessment. Everyone has to learn the same thing. And then we say to you, right, make it a scene. It's a performance. It's not just, can you do these moves? It's, can you do these moves? And can you do them convincingly as a scene, as a performance? Would I watch that on stage? And the big problem with that is you have to shoehorn a script into your fight. If I turn this on its head, and as a choreographer go out to do a show, you know where all the blocking and the movement's happening, you know what the characters are up to, you can make those movements apply to them.
So you can probably imagine I was quite excited by the prospect of violence that fits the scene rather than having some violence and having to shoehorn the scene in around it. I mean, for Kate and Petruchio, we did take some stuff out, but with Shakespeare that's kind of a given. I mean, obviously we also didn't perform the entire play. Right, so we have the people, or at least 3 of the people, that being me, Bruce, and Duncan. Now we need somewhere to be. What I need, I think, is someone with a big, posh, slightly old-fashioned house. I don't want the setting to be entirely modern, because I always think that looks like a little bit weird. I feel like it can't be a very modern looking space. So I mentioned this murder mystery play, and the main character in the play was played by a guy whose name is, no lie, Errol Flynn. And Errol has a friend called Leslie who has this gorgeous old farmhouse that he was in fact willing to lend us for the day. And so on a cloudy Tuesday in October, Bruce and Errol and I rattled off to this farmhouse with authentic wattle and daub, and I said, oh yes, this is nice. I like this. Bruce, can we make this work? And Bruce said, yeah, sure. And I said, right. That was relatively easy. Great. And then Bruce said, Errol, we need someone to do sound. Do you want to come hold a microphone? And Errol said, yes. So that was that sorted without me having to do anything. And again, I said, great. Now, when's everyone free? I wanted to shoot as soon as was physically possible, basically, and since I work full-time and Leslie, who owns the house, has a fairly irregular schedule, it was challenging. This is more difficult than I anticipated. I think I'm gonna go with that. Not in a bad way, but I'm kind of stressing a little bit because it's Thursday and we've finally arranged that we're going to shoot on Monday. It's surprisingly difficult to organise 5 people to be in the same place at the same time. I mean, to be entirely fair, it was a surprisingly challenging project overall. Mentally it was quite taxing, physically it was quite taxing, also kind of emotionally as well, though I really shouldn't be surprised by that at this point. It turns out there's something of a, let's call it a skills gap between knowing how to do a sword fighting scene with slightly flirty dialogue in it and doing a very flirty scene which also contains, like, physical violence. And right at this moment, I am not, like, 100% convinced that I'm going to be very good at this at all. And it's just because I've never done it before. I think once we actually start blocking it, then it'll be okay. I have literally no idea how this is going to pan out, and I really want it to be good, but I'm a little bit stressy. I don't think you could find my comfort zone with a map right now, but we're doing okay. But we played on. We had a date. We had a time. We had another person. I got a text on, like, Saturday night, and it said, by the way, I'm bringing Jack. He's bringing his lights and it's gonna be great. It's gonna look fantastic. And I went, okay, I don't know if I've got enough food for Jack. And if you're thinking, Jill, why would you need enough food for Jack? We were in a farmhouse in the part of Kent where, you know, your nearest supermarket is like 25-minute drive away. Now, I know that sounds laughably close to civilization for people who live in places like Canada, but when you have a certain number of hours to shoot in, you really don't want to be taking over an hour out of your schedule to go and find people lunch. I make a great pasta bake though. You can ask any of them. And then I also had like a minor kind of, because I went, I don't know anyone called Jack. I don't think I know Jack. As it turned out, Jack is really nice, and I have in fact met him before because he's involved in drama and filmmaking in Kent, and it's a really small world. So where and when for production were sorted. But when was the scene going to be set? Well, I hadn't quite worked that out yet. I didn't really want to do modern because we have this old-fashioned farmhouse, but on the other hand, because we've had to shoot it so quickly, I haven't had any time to go and find any costume stuff. So we're gonna go into the charity shop and see what we can find. And also I haven't talked to Duncan about it yet. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. So it turned out I went to the charity shop and found a dress that looked vaguely 60s Jackie-O kind of feel, and I went, ooh, I also have a dress at home that kind of has that same style. So I texted Duncan, who owns flares and a roll neck, and I thought, fantastic, that's good enough for government work, and there we were. I think the message I sent him when he said I've got flares and a roll neck was, I mean, I came to ask for your hand in marriage, but obviously I didn't want to like dress up too much for it, which I feel is very Petruchio, and so that's good.
Costume is a massive consideration. If you look at the Regency period, the costumes, the jackets, particularly for men, are very tight under the arm. I wouldn't be able to raise my arms up this way. If you were going to fight in that style, you'd be very aware that you can't be throwing your arms out sort of this way. Everything would be sort of more face on and a lot smaller, really. We had very free movement with clothing, but the big thing really was footwear. What kind of shoes are you wearing?
I did a lot of skidding around the table, actually. That
can take quite a few takes just to sort of get down on that movement itself. We haven't even done any fighting yet.
But you know, I do think we should get to the actual fighting. You start by grabbing your resident expert and saying, I want to do this scene, but violently. Help. What happens after that? Well.
First thing I want to know within all that is let's get a copy of the script, have a look at it, and see what the feeling is about the whole thing. Is it comedy, you know, farce? Is it tragedy? Is it, you know, melodrama? You want to do a Shakespearean scene? Okay. People set that in all kinds of different ways.
So true.
So in this particular instance we had it with a sort of a 60s vibe, which means now you can get away with anything up into and including the 60s, but particular emphasis on that style. We've got Petruchio and Kate, and in that scene they are in a domestic environment. What's the dynamic with their relationship as well? Well, he's looking to make her his wife. He has an overinflated sense of himself and thinks it'll be a piece of cake, and Kate obviously is a lot stronger willed than you would expect. That makes for a really interesting dynamic, so obviously we've got to start choreographing around that as well. We can also add into that the time, so it's the 60s, so we're not looking at forsooth kind of movement. You know, we're not going for sort of typical Jacobean kind of movement here. We're going in 20th century. And then have a little read through, see where we want to start putting stuff in. Sometimes the dialogue just hands you a gift and says, please do this, and you go, great. Sometimes he'd even write it out for you in stage direction.
So what we ended up doing a couple of days before the shoot was wandering around my garden going, yes, there's a sofa right here which we could sit down on, and how big is the table in the middle of the room? And I think I should punch you at the end of this line and maybe at the end of that one as well. Now, there were a couple of things that I was particularly proud of having done, and we're going to show you those now. If you want to believe that I actually just punched a guy really hard in the stomach, look away. But first, twirling!
The idea was, I think we came around this way.
Yep.
And then sat down.
You know, having watched this back, I just realised that I basically hit Duncan in the face with my hair every single time we did this. Sorry, Duncan. Anyway, back to the technical bit.
What we want to have is as much contact as possible so that we don't get any percussion, no? So we don't get any impact. Because if I just threw you around this way and then grabbed you and pulled you down, if I position myself incorrectly as well, you'd rock your head back, you could smack me in the face and, you know, break my nose. Don't really fancy that, okay? So what we're going to do is, as we're here and I pull you around, I take a step forward, and by doing so, I create a nice centre of balance for myself and somewhere for you to go. Sure. So all that happens is, as that happens, it leads your right foot round here, and I end up in this position here. What happens now is I've got shoulder to shoulder here, yeah, which means that you can't go anywhere, you can't fall, unannounced or anything like that. Yep. I've got this hand here to control what's happening here, and I've got this hand here now. I've picked this up on the way. Now as I come and sit down, I take that step back and look there, found the sofa, I know where it is, so I don't have to worry about that now. Now as we do, and you sit back down, so just push down, there you go, and then seated. It means that it all flows in one. So we've got here, straight back round, boom, and there. It looks like I've taken control of you and made it just happen, you know, spontaneously. The quicker it happens, you know, with a little bit of in the moment flair, you know, it becomes a bigger thing and looks a little more sort of maybe raucous and sort of flirtatious and things instead.
And yes, it is absolutely as fun as it looks. But I know that some of you who follow me on Twitter or on the YouTube community tab are really here because you saw that gif that I put up of the contact punch to the stomach. And honestly, it's probably my favourite part of the entire scene. Just because every time I look at it, I think, wow, that actually looks really good. The contact punch. Let's do this.
So what we do is we use what we call reverse energy or reverse tension. The idea is we use a loose fist, so one you can basically see through, and as you come in you make the sound itself, okay? And when it goes in, boom, it pops out essentially faster than it goes in. You know, the idea is you clap with your own fist. So what we had with you was you came up and you did a small uppercut punch into the stomach. What I do, obviously, is I tense up, you know, because I don't have a washable stomach, but I have to work very hard at pretending I do. So I work very hard at tensing up as hard as I can, so that when you do hit me, I'm fully prepared for it. I'm not taking a nice deep breath in when you do it, which, you know, can quite often end up in leading it to being winded and things like that. So we go for a nice area in the stomach where all the muscle somewhere is. So if you do to me, again, I've got one leg forward, and as you go in, yeah, just pop, pop, there, okay? Now, again, if I just stand there, now and again, okay, and don't do anything, it gives away to the audience that it really didn't hurt. And so all we do is have to play that into reaction. That, quite simply, is just crumpling forward, okay? So if you go again, here it comes in, oh, and just drop it, and then take your time. Maybe you have been winded, you lose your breath a bit. You have to play those sort of reactions into it.
But you want to see what happened after we got into the space and blocked and rehearsed it properly, huh? Well, in that case, I will leave you in suspense no longer. So, The Taming of the Shrew, Act 2, Scene 1, Kate meets Petruchio.
Oh, but here she comes. Speak, Petruchio, speak. Ah! Good morrow, Kate, for, that is your name, I hear.
Well, have you heard, but something hard of hearing. They call me Katharine, that do talk of me.
Ah, but you lie in faith, for you are called Plain Kate, and Bonny Kate, and Kate the Cursed. But Kate, prettiest Kate in all of Christendom, Kate of Kate Hall, my super dainty Kate, for all dainties are Kates, and therefore, Kate, take this of me, Kate of my consolation. Hearing thy mildness praised in every town, thy virtue spoke of, thy beauty sounded, yet not so deeply as to thee belongs, I am moved to make thee my wife.
Moved? In good time. Let him that moved you hither remove you hence. I knew you at the first you were immovable.
Why, what's immovable?
A joined stool.
Ah, thou hast hit it. Come, sit on me.
Asses are made to bear, and so are you.
Oh, women are made to bear, and so are you.
No such jade as you of me, you mean?
Oh, alas, good Kate, I will not burden thee, for knowing you to be young and light.
Too light for such a swain as you to catch, and yet as heavy as my weight should be.
Ah, come now, wasp. In faith, you are too angry.
If I be waspish, best beware my sting.
Ah, then my remedy is to pluck it out.
Aye, if the fool could find it where it lies.
What? Who knows not where a wasp doth keep his sting? In his tail?
In his tongue.
Whose tongue?
Yours. If you talk of tails. So, farewell.
Ah, what, Kate? My tongue in your tail? Come now, good Kate, I am a gentleman. Ah! I swear I'll cuff you if you strike again.
So may you lose your arms. If you strike me, you are no gentleman. And if no gentleman, why then, no arms.
Oh, a herald, Kate. Come, put me in thy books.
And what is your crest? A coxcomb.
A combless cock. And Kate shall be my hen.
No cock of mine. You crow too like a craven.
Come now, Kate. Look not so sour.
It is my fashion when I see a crab.
Why? Here is no crab, and therefore look not sour.
There is, there is.
Well, then show it.
Had I a glass, I would.
You mean my face?
Well aimed of such a young one.
Oh, by St. George. I am too young for you.
And yet you are withered.
'Tis with cares.
I care not.
Ah, nay, I hear you, Kate. You scape not so.
I'd shake you if I tarry. Let me go!
No, not a whit. For I find you passing gentle. 'Twas told me that you were rough and coy and sullen, and now I find report a very liar. For thou art pleasant, gamesome, passing courteous, and, though slow in speech, sweet as springtime. Thou canst not frown, nor look askance, nor bite the lip as wenches will, nor hast thou pleasure to be cross in talk, but thou with mildness entertainst thy wooers, with gentle comfort, soft and affable. Why does the world report that Kate doth limp? Oh! Oh, slanderous world! Oh, Kate like the hazel twig, straight and slender, and as brown in hue as hazelnuts, and sweeter than the kernels. Oh, let me see thee walk. Thou dost not wait?
Go, fool. Of whom thou keep'st command.
Did Diane ever so become a grove as Kate with her princely gait? Let thou be Diane, and Diane be Kate, and let Kate be chaste, and let Diane be sportful.
Where did you study all this goodly speech?
'Tis extempore, from my mother Wit.
A witty mother, witless else her son.
Am I not wise?
Yes, keep you warm.
Marry, sweet Katharine, I mean in thy bed. And therefore, putting all this chat aside, I am now a husband for your turn. For by this light, the light whereby I see thy beauty, and thy beauty that doth make me like thee well, thou must not be married to any man but me. Here comes your father. Make no denial, I must and will have Katharine for my wife.
I gotta tell you, while I'm really quite happy with how this scene turned out, it was not how I expected the project to go at all when I envisioned it, like, back in August. It was a good time though. Next time swords. But I think that's probably more than enough for now. A special and particular thank you to my patrons, without whom None of this could have happened. I appreciate you very much, and your patience with my wild flights of fancy. Thank you Bruce and Jack for making us look good, Errol for making us sound good, and Duncan for letting me punch him repeatedly in the stomach. And thank you for watching. If this is your first time here, feel free to subscribe and look around and see what else catches your fancy. If you like this, share it, and regardless, hope to see you around.
My job was just to go in there and make sure that it all fitted together. And because everyone had a very clear vision with what they wanted, that was very easy to do. And of course, everyone's very easy to work with too.
Well, you have to say that. Code's standing right here.
Yes. You can't see, but she's holding a knife.
He's only mostly joking.